Hi, and welcome to the Practical Ascension Podcast. I'm Tracy Gaudet, your Practical Ascension Guide. Today on the podcast, I am continuing on my Ascension Impact interview series with Whitney Mullings. Whitney is a soul brand shaman. She guides transformational leaders to connect with their own soul desires by unveiling their unconscious need to prove their value and bring death to patterns in giving of themselves to trade for badges of honor to be a good mom, successful leader, and the many roles along with the many personas mentally, energetically, and spiritually. Experientially rebirthing their own soul's power, presence, and creativity through shamanic journeying, transforming into that new identity, matching the vibrations of their desires and becoming. That is how Whitney helps her clients to lead as a soul brand, speak their voice unfiltered, and dive into new levels with filler trust. So join us today as we discuss bringing a connection to an integration of the divine feminine. Hi, welcome to the Practical Ascension Podcast. Today, I am joined by my friend and soul brand therapist, Whitney Mullings. So Whitney is somebody I've been connected to for years. And if you have been following the podcast, you have probably seen me have a few conversations with her. And today we are exploring the series that I have running throughout February, which is Activating Your Ascension Impact. So taking a look from different perspectives from light leaders like Whitney around how we can anchor our ascension impact, what that looks like, what that feels like from your perspective, because every light leader is going to have a different perspective. And I am so excited to get to chat with Whitney and hear her perspective on this subject. Welcome, Whitney.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for having me. As always, it's such a pleasure. It's such an honor too. Thanks. I just love you.
I love you too. Yay. And Whitney's one of the few Canadians I get to connect with as well. So that's always fun. There's not a huge amount of us that are in my network in this kind of spiritual realm. So I'm always excited to connect with Whitney since we've got that connection going on too. So yay. I want to hear, because I haven't really chatted with you in a few years, and I know that it seems like everybody's journeys are shifting up and expanding and changing as we're moving into this kind of new wave of ascension as we receive every single year. So I'd love to hear more about what is kind of flowing through for you at this moment, and what kind of vibes you're getting right now, just in general, kind of to open it up.
Oh, that's a great way to start a conversation. Well, I think that it's more evident and it's more open. Like it's so much of the rise of the feminine. Like there is this big awakening. Everybody is woke these days, right?
Yeah.
So which is really nice and very, very exciting to see. And I would relate that to like earlier on years of my own awakening. I feel like that's where the world and the collective is at right now. So it's like the level of awareness is shifting, like where the awareness is shifting to like, oh, going within.
Yeah, which
like
kind
focusing.
of was like that catalyst of the like pandemic, right? Where that going within came about.
Exactly, because everybody had kind of nowhere to go but within.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was like so nice to see. And so now I feel like almost giddy, like very, very fortunate that you would probably know what I mean, because we've started this work like years before the pandemic. So I feel like we're at the forefront of it, and where the collective is at right now. And so what I'm diving into now at this point in my practice is really going into like, what does embodiment mean? So there is the awareness, but then also embodying the energy, but also coming back down as a whole, like in body, and really what does it mean by day to day, and how do you act and speak and share and focus and intention, like spiritual self through you, right?
Exactly. So less about kind of like the concepts of spirituality and more about like actually living them, and like what does that actually mean? What does that actually feel like? What does that look like? And I love this. And this is kind of tying into a focus that I'm noticing now too. The embodiment I'm seeing everywhere. Like that's what's going on for me as well. And that's what I'm seeing with a lot of people talk about right now. And I find it's perhaps what a larger percentage of the collective is really going to need, as they are, like you said, just kind of waking up and going more into that spiritual pathway. These people are going to be looking for and needing people that have embodied it, that aren't just talking about it to talk about it, that have embodied it. So I want to kind of look at two things here with you. So there's the embodiment, and then there's something else you mentioned, which was the divine feminine. And I know that has been an aspect of your journey in the last few years as well. So I'd love to hear what's kind of coming through, and, what role you find the feminine, or how you see those two connecting.
Yeah. So the feminine has really been about the intuition that I knew, like right from the very beginning. Like, how do you connect with more of your own, when I say define feminine, sometimes I find myself interchanging the terms as well. It's like, how do you work more with your intuition? How do you pay more attention to your reading of the energy so that you could be more in flow? And when I say in flow is because there's a lot of the masculine at play, the societal patriarchal way that we're brought up, like the hustle, the grinding, the all of giving yourself. You need to work hard, to earn the success, instead of like embodying that you are a success in existence by breathing, by being you, right?
Yeah.
So, it's coming from that shift of like, that's where I want to be as an ideal, to really living that, in your day-to-day experience, how to be human and be like so led. And so I think the divine feminine, it's like more of an umbrella term of like, how do you carry yourself to be in tune with what you desire, what you want to do, and then bring yourself into doing the things that sometimes it's about doing your dream, but also like doing the things that you need to do, like things that pays the bills, making lunches for your kids.
Yeah.
Washing the dishes. And so like, I think the divine feminine would be like the glue. And how do you come to finding that place of your own inner peace? So operating to your own truth and desire, but be human all at the same time, if that makes sense.
It totally does make sense. Yeah. Because like what I kind of see, and what I'm getting from that as well, is, so you had mentioned kind of like the masculine way that we've been like going about things, and that society is still currently running on right now. And then as the feminine is reintroduced, it's not that we go into this crystallized state of stillness and like that's what there is. It's that there's the balancing flow of, like, just like you said, like those everyday things, but the energy behind them is a little bit different. Like it doesn't have that forceful kind of push energy, and it's a lot more of kind of like welcoming it, welcoming, those things, like you said, that have to get done, that are just what life is right now, and kind of welcoming those in a softer way, kind of feels like.
Totally. So perfectly worded. And I think that it's about like, well, how do you bring the ideals and to be human with it? And so like, I think those softer terms is, how do you structure your own way of being, like through boundaries, through your schedules, like through your, really, it's about prioritizing too, I find a lot of the times. It's like, how do you as a business owner, entrepreneur, like the one of the privileges, you get to make your own schedule, but then at the same time, we could drive ourselves crazy. It's like work first, I got to get this done. And so, which is good, because you need to have that type of discipline to really actually run a profitable business. Like, there is so much pieces to go with it, and it just needs to get done.
Yeah.
But, I think the privilege comes from like, well, you could honor your divine feminine. And this is like actually what I'm doing right now as a practice. Like, I'm going to play first.
And what a concept that is, right? And I know, like myself, I'm somebody who's just naturally more centered in the masculine, like as a mom, as a business owner, as firstborn daughter, like all of these things really define me as, you know, somebody who takes action and takes action quickly. So I totally resonate with that, where, you know, part of the feminine of that, integrating it back in to schedule and priorities and all that, is having that fun first, which is a foreign concept for a lot of people maybe listening that may resonate with that as well.
It is like, and that's just it. Sometimes it's like a shift in how you want to approach things that works for you. And more importantly, it's different for everybody, but it's like what an action and behavior that you could, I guess, lead yourself through as a response of like, you know, I put myself first, I am my own priority. And, you know, it could just be something so simple, taking 10 minutes out, like to watch a little TV before I start working. And then your creativity flows, right? Because it's just so simple act of like, and I think that when you say you're the firstborn daughter, like it just ingrained probably in your way of upbringing. You got to take care of everyone else. You got to take care of everything else first, you know?
Yeah.
But it comes back to relearning how to take care of yourself first so that you can have the energy in the room to take care of everything that you need to.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the more kind of coming back to that theme, even that we mentioned before about a lot more people kind of waking up and going within and all those things, is that as space holders for that, besides just like practically through our business, but like energetically as space holders for that, in order to hold that space for the collective, for our families, for all this, we need to have that feminine integrated to have that space. And so I think a lot of people that could get by previously, kind of going and not looking after themselves as much as their body and their energy was needing, can't get by on that anymore. And I noticed that for myself, and like a big breaking point probably last spring, where I didn't even realize that I needed boundaries, like in terms of like my kids and my family and things like that. Like I knew it was imbalanced, but you don't really realize how much the change needs to happen and needs to shift until you come to like a point and you're just like, oh, wow, actually look at that. So yeah, I totally get that. And I love like everything you're saying really is about the embodiment of it, right? It's not just about saying these are the characteristics, like, you know, but how can I put this into my life? And in simple ways. Yeah.
You know, I'll give you the example of like even one of my clients right now. You know, she understands the hustle is not working. She understands giving herself, it's not working. And that's not where she wants to be.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we do have the idea of like you can actually play and be creative and still juggle all the things that on your schedule.
Yeah.
And so, you know, she had started doing scheduling time for herself, you know, plugging into calendar, you know, like lunch break or like a meditation break.
Yeah.
But even to that extent, it's still very masculine in a way because it's like, it's like, oh, just a thing to do, you know, it's like on your to-do list.
I have to check that off my list type of thing. Yeah.
Yes. And it can really come to kind of nip you in the bud in the end, because like if your day just kind of shifted in a way where you're like, I'm going to forego this break. And then you come back to beat yourself up to say, oh, I didn't follow through. I didn't do it right. And I think like that's kind of the contending type of thoughts that we might have internally.
Yeah.
So exactly, how do you be in your internal divine feminine, right?
Exactly.
So it's so funny because it's not something that you could just look at your schedule to like block it out. You know, it's not just about business, but it's about like all the pieces of your whole like lifestyle. So it comes back to you as an individual, and it's not compartmentalized in like, you know, business hours, family hours. Like it doesn't quite work that way. So it's really coming into your own practice and really go into that place of connecting with your own soul's energy and really looking to answers in that way. Like, well, what is it that's going to work for you? Because it's different for everybody. Like, I can't tell you.
Exactly. And it's like, and again, like I keep seeing that same type of energy where when you're trying to approach it from that normal masculine energy in the mind, in the logic, then you can kind of just give yourself more masculine. Whereas you drop it down into like the heart, you said like the feeling, the intuition,
Yeah.
then you understand a little bit more of the flow. So you're kind of weaving that in together.
Oh my gosh, I love that you said to drop it in.
Yeah,
So the same client, I'll give you the example because I find that examples, it's like kind of good to give you an idea to like
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
understand. Like for her, she's like, okay, what do all the leadership textbooks tell you? You need to
Yeah.
have like exercise in your life, right? And so for her, she's like, I'm gonna do personal training sessions, right? Doing all the right things, but in the end, it's like still not feeling it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're not feeling is when you say, hey, this is not working. Like those are really your own energy telling you something's
Yeah.
got to be looked at. Like the frustration,
Yeah.
it's really good. Like those
Exactly.
right? Those are the emotions that kind of give you a window to like, hey, you got to pay attention to like this. So
Yep.
that's your own like process of like finding, well, what is it for you that you could change? So you could invite more of your defined feminine. So then for her, she's like, you know what? I don't feel good, with weight training. I'm
Yep.
doing all the right things, but like in results, it's not bringing her the inner peace, like, still feeling being pulled in all directions, no time to herself, stresses, feeling, the frustration
Yep.
or anxiety or whatever your like emotion could be in relating to for yourself at this moment. But for her, it's like, well, what am I doing wrong? You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah, which is the opposite
So
energy of what she wanted to do it for.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it's like you're now getting yourself into thinking like you're doing something wrong. Meanwhile, you're trying to take care of yourself. You're taking the initiative. You're doing whatever it takes. So you're not wrong.
Exactly.
It's just about going deeper. So the embodiment again is really
Yeah.
listening and on a deeper level, like, well, what is it that I need? What is it that I want? What is it that's going to bring the balance that you need? Because balance is
Yeah.
not 50-50, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so the work that we've been doing, it's like, well, I don't know. I can't tell you, but I'll lead you into the practice so that you can find out and
Yeah.
get in touch with your own insight. And like, Lord behold, like she's like, I never knew this. She lived at her home for however many years. There was like a yoga center right across from where she lives. And she's like, the energy there just feels so nice. And she just checked
Yeah.
it out. And you know what? And now it's just about trying new things to what works. And maybe weight training is not for her this season.
Yep.
So maybe it's a yoga practice to get some movement, but movement to bring you into meditation. That's what the practice of yoga is about, right? And so far is working wonderful.
I love that.
And
Yeah.
the inner peace is how you feel. It's the calm that you feel. It's like you could just conquer the world as
Mm.
challenges, difficulties, confrontations in businesses and writing yourself to show up. Like that's kind of like okay. It's like, all right, bring it on when you're in that space, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And how it's not kind of like where maybe she would previously have defined a successful thing is doing for herself. It's kind of like our shift of what brings value to her life as well, right? And what brings value to
Yes.
her life, that's connected into that inner voice, that intuition, that divine feminine. So connecting with that and flowing with that. I
Oh my
love that.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? It is so much fun once you dive into the work of connecting with your divine feminine, because as you say, it's all about how you feel. And so
Yep.
when you connect with your own feminine, it's like you could just walk in the world and know you are in integrity with who you
Yeah.
are.
Mm,
And you would have answers come to you quicker because it's like, it's not through the thinking anymore. Like you said earlier, it's dropped into the heart. And so that's how you lead in every decisions you make, because you know how you want to feel. So you know where you draw the lines, you know what is of your core values. And like, to me, and the energetic practice of connecting, it's like that's when you really have a good feel sense of like the one that could be like, don't fuck with me energy.
Absolutely.
And it's so empowering, right?
Yeah, it is. There's like a level of your certainty of self where it's just like, yeah, you're just like it is. It's kind of like a walking, flowing forward. You're not demanding anything and you're not aggressive. You just are like, this is just is what it is. And
and I think the key word that you just said, I'm like, that's it, is the certainty.
It is,
you know, when you have that certainty in your energy, you open up to clarity, what it is that you want to do, you know, clarity and what brings meaning to your work, and clarity to what you are opening up to receiving.
Exactly.
So this is almost like the threshold or the turning point to when you welcome in, when you call in, and the energy of magnetic energy of like, okay, just come on in.
Exactly.
You know, bring in all the people I love to work with in business, and like where you actually come into attraction. So it's not like pushing, you know, in the marketing, oh, I got to show up, I got to produce content because I want to call those people in. So it's always like those out energy, but you still do the same thing, but the energy is now attracting them to come in as you call out and show up like, I'm open for business.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then they seek you out. It is like the most magical turning point, you know, in the experience of business, you know, when you have this practice of calling in, and that comes from like opening to receiving your own divine feminine.
I love that. So okay, I feel like we can keep going on this path for a while, so I'm going to kind of shift it a little bit into our Ascension Impact focus, which is really what we've been talking about the whole time anyway, because all of this rolls together. But as you are looking at Ascension Impact and kind of feeling into the way that's been flowing for you recently, and what's coming up for you, what is your perspective on that? What comes to the surface when you focus on that?
Ooh, I love this question. So, you know, what I'm really connecting in with more these days is, you know, we all came from the stars.
No, I'm with you, because we're both two people that are like, we're pretty firmly grounded, like people, but also
like I feel so much more connection as the stardust that we are. And you know, the science kind of have proven it. Like there's elements in our bones and body, you know, right? Same traces as the elements that you would find in the stars out in the space. So I think the expansion of the topic of ascension is like, you first need to realize you're not separate. You are Earth.
Yes.
You know, like all of us as a collective is actually part of Earth. So that's how we operate as Earth. Yeah. And so like once you have that embodiment and understanding and feel sense of that, there is so much power and life force that you can connect into, like outside of yourself, first of all, to manifesting whatever you are manifesting, like calling in, you know, making your reality. And that's what manifesting is, right? And so the practice of expanding from that level of embodiment, it's like the connection of the earth with the stars, so outside of even our solar system. And so I think the ascension is, how do we get to that level of feeling as one with earth, so that now that you could feel into the connection with the universe itself, right?
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
And so the ascension, it's not individual, but ascension is earth,
Mm.
you know, and how like the energy it's raising so that we could become part of the
My
universe,
dog liked the
right?
conversation. She just pushed her way into the room.
I love it when they join in.
So it's like we're a like we're the mixing bowl in all of this, like the connection to the stars, the connection to the earth, and just like you said, there's no separation. There's no like humanity is ascending. It's the earth is ascending. Humanity's with the earth here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like for people who answer to this path of a light worker,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the ascension of your own energy or spiritual practice, essentially that's what we're doing,
Yeah.
is to like lift and raise the energy so that everybody on earth come to realize that we're not separate because we are all earth. We're just coming out of the earth. So we are one as
Mm.
earth. But then earth is not separate to the universe, you know? It's
Yeah.
we understand the solar system, but there's so much more outside of our solar system.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of where that tie-in is
Mm.
if we come to more acting as if we're all one, we're not separate, then the love and the compassion for one another and how we lead our day-to-day like human would be more of a win-win situation always.
Yeah. Yeah.
There would be more room for understanding instead of judgment, because like judgment, it's really about separating you and I so that I make myself feel better about myself, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So again, that kind of like that takes it back to the conversation with like the feminine, I find, right? Because
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is, and I think that that's a big thing that we're coming back to as a society now. Is well, I mean, it's been pretty obvious that the feminine's been rising, over the last multiple
Three,
decades, but
four.
really the last few years, yeah, where it's been like really coming into force. And not just in like feminism and things like that, but in softness and in compassion. And I think that was another catalyst of that the pandemic time is the compassion for other people in the world seemed to go up a little bit, and in my experience anyway, it did. So that you're kind of we're not feeling separate from anybody in the world because we're all going through the same thing together. So that feeling of connection, like you said, it's about, feeling the connection to everything. And the first step in that, or one
Yeah,
of the steps in that, is feeling a connection to each other, feeling like we're not all these separate beings that are just going about doing our own thing, but we're all very interconnected, and we're all involved in this, really.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Would you like an example? Something that,
Yeah.
um, so I always look at our kids
Yeah.
because, as it's such a privilege to be a mother, like to
Mm-hmm.
go through motherhood because you
99% of the
see,
time, but yes.
right? 99%. Well, we all get it. It's
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
50-50,
Yep.
really.
But we get it. But yeah, but like in theory, we understand it's always a privilege, but yes.
So, I always come to think of like how pure and just full of love a newborn baby is. It's just
Hmm.
like a blank canvas,
Yeah.
right? So how do they become like adults? Like how adult like ourselves where there's judgment, but like you and I, we don't really judge others, but then we have our own judgment to work through like doubts,
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
right? And so it all comes back, in the same spiral of how they came about. So then I always wonder like how does it even happen, And that's kind of like what has started this whole journey for me. And I believe it's the same reason for you as well to like embark on this spiritual path. But anyways, the example that I was thinking of, this happened recently. I got to attend a field trip with my son.
Mm.
So he's grade 4. And so, there was a little mixing of classes going on just so that, it fits, the field trip space.
Yep.
So he was mixed with not his own class, but they all know each other because they are like, they see each other in recess, whatever. It's not like they're all complete strangers. Anyways, so it was the time where it was to find a group.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my son has ASD, so social, it's not natural to him. And so we've been working with him, like how to be a good friend, how to take initiative, how do you, engage with others to make a group. So I saw he was doing everything, apply everything that we've been working on. He was so brave and asking other kids, like, to make a group. So it's either make a group of 2 or join a group of 2 to have a group of 3.
Yeah.
So I saw him done both, asked to join a group of 2 or make a group of 2. And, the kids are not mean. They're sweet kids, but they didn't want to be in a group with him.
Yeah.
And so they have that glaze over look, don't know how to respond to say no, but glaze over. So in a way, it's a rejection. As a mom, heartbroken, but
absolutely. Yeah.
And those are the moments I'm like,
yeah, let me just wrap you up and let me put you back in the room. We're good here. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But, this is part of his journey, but spiritually, how can I look at it so I can feel better?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is like what it's come to. It's the fact that we're still very separate, even seeing as young as grade 4, even in today's time,
yeah,
that's what I realize. It's how separate we are, even little kids, and the energetic term and the spiritual understanding. What's happening is they want to reject that part of themselves.
Yeah.
Whatever they see of him, it's a reflection of what they do not want to be associated with.
Yeah.
If we're all connected and not separate from each other, the answer would have been simple. Yes, we have room. Would think nothing of it. Right?
I agree. And something I've been thinking about recently as well, and something I read somewhere about science and spirituality. I can't remember what book exactly, but it was something around how the fundamentals that like we're teaching our kids and that we've been being taught as a society is that everything is separate, and that's just part of the fundamental teachings that we learn and that we're ingrained and that generationally we pass down. And so that kind of carries forward. And so that, just like you said, that separation is ingrained from such a very young age. But when we begin to shift like the narrative and kind of break down those old science structures that are saying that everything is separated, and bring into this more new science structure that's emerging, and that no, we're actually all connected. We're actually all made of the same stuff, and really teaching that. And I think it'll be I don't know how long, a few generations, or what that's going to take. But whenever we can start teaching from that young age that, we are all connected. There's no separation. What happens to them happens to you. Whenever that can start being taught from everything. And because I know, like, we're not teaching our kids specifically, you're separate from everybody, but it's still so ingrained in us that the way we're looking at things and the way we're saying things kind of brings that paradigm about. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I think that the kids are so smart. So it's not all like communicated verbally, but they just absorb.
Absolutely.
Like soaked it all in. They're essentially just acting like adults without filter.
That's it. I know. And that's scary. Right? Like, that is scary.
Like, adults just have more sense, like, oh, I can't say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But kids are just like, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so it's that. And I think it's the disparity. It's also encouraged sometimes. So with the intention, so you could feel good about yourself, but it's always in that dynamic that you are comparing yourself. Someone else is here, so you could feel good about yourself instead of like, you could just feel good about yourself no matter what. Everyone is unique.
And that's the feminine again, right? The feminine, the divine feminine has no issues with that. She's just like, she's good. But the wounded feminine's like, well, I'm probably not good enough unless I'm getting a better test score or a better,
exactly.
Social, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And It is so hard sometimes. Like my kids are grade 4 and grade 2, and sometimes the stories they tell me, they can't word it, but they can feel it,
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. So we
But
have a
yeah,
ways to go, but like we also have the vision for it, I think, right? And this is clearly like, well, I believe the ascension process has been going on since probably about the 60s and like obviously intensifying over the last 10 years, 10, 11 years. But so this kind of feels like the real conscious generation of parents right now as like millennials type of generation, millennials, Gen X kind of generation that is raising kids in a way where we see that there can be a better future and that the kids are part of that mindset. So it's like
yeah.
it's exciting to me to think of new generations being born and like the way that we were raised in like in 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s and 90s is so different from how children are raised now, just in terms of like support and understanding, and nothing against like our parents' generations and all that by any means, but like the support is different for allowing them to be who they are, for accepting them
Oh
as who they
yeah.
are. So now what's going to happen with their kids? Like what kind of support and acknowledgement is that going to do? Like I kind of, visualize what that future is going to be for next generations with all of this mindset. And I have a lot of hope for it. But as parents right now who can kind of see both ways, like it can be kind of defeating, really.
It can be, but I think it just had to start somewhere. And I think
Yeah.
it would start with like people who are listening,
Yeah.
you and I, like it's just something that you have to take within and just focus on yourself. And that's all that you could ever do.
That's
And
absolutely right.
so,
Yeah.
and so I think that would be the start of it. And it's just teaching more love and kindness, coming
Absolutely.
from
Yeah.
having that love and kindness and compassion for yourself
Mm,
it's just coming back to more self-focus instead of
yes.
like outward facing. So,
Yeah.
as adult too, that's the victim mentality, right? It's like,
Yeah.
how do I make meaning of what's been done wrong to me? And
Yeah.
and that would
Exactly.
be the
Yeah.
work and the challenge of like, okay, well, go with your own emotions. What is it that you can change and look at so that you come back to the divine feminine so that you
Yeah.
could just be more full of your
Mm,
own source energy and be
yes.
more full in the love and who you are
Mm,
because it comes from that space and you get to show how to be treated so that you
yeah.
get to show where you need to be respected in
Yeah.
terms of boundaries, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really where the focus, like for me, because I'm like, there's so much to work on.
Mm,
And and hopefully, the kids that we raise would have more of that loving kindness and spread that,
yeah.
and just by being.
Mm, I think
Yeah.
so. I think so. And I feel like we could go off on a tangent and continue on with this conversation as well. But what I'd like to hear just before we wrap up as well is anything else that is kind of flowing to the surface for you that you want to share with the audience today, anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Define Feminine has been in the forefront for the past few years, like you've mentioned, I think going with like the movement of where we are
Mm,
as a collective. And I find that the more work we do in finding our own Define Feminine, connecting more with her, being more full with yourself, it's really going back to like be it the attraction
yeah.
to what you would like to manifest and make real of your desires and that closely speak to you need to come back to her so that you could open to receiving. And I
Yeah.
think that is such like a simple concept that like I understood on a different level in the
Mm,
last years. It's like
yeah.
you connect with your intuition, which is your own feminine, and that would lead you into your creative ideas, your inspirations to do the stuff that you want to do, that you can make meaning of. And
Mm.
then you bring in your masculine because you do need to do the
To
actions,
do. Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
then if you just leave to your feminine, then you just be like oming it all out every single day and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And so then you need to bring in your masculine to actually create those into your world of existence. But until you come back to your feminine to sit back and be in that energy of deserving and really trust and know and expect all that to materialize, you know. And I think that's kind of like where a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs are like stuck in. It's like inviting those intuition, like working in ways of ideas that comes in your downloads, and doing all the things, but the results might not always happen, is because you need to fall back into her to open up, to receive, you know? And so, you know, as much as how the feminine can show in your day-to-day human experience, and it shows through how you mother, how you lead your business, like I find it's all coming back to yourself, if that makes sense. So you know, when it comes to this practice, there's no like compartmentalize again. It's like, I'll do this only for business, but it's actually in everything, in every area, every aspects of you.
Yeah, because it's energetic. So you can't just be like, okay, my left arm is into my divine feminine and the rest of my body is like you. There's no, you can't do that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think, you know, for your audience, the ones who are doing this work as a business, as a vehicle to, you know, a way to do their mission in life, right? Yeah. So that's kind of how I blend the two. So I guess in closing, what I'm trying to say is this practice, you know, it comes back to yourself, but it's all about this is where it all spirals out. So doing this work, and then keep your focus and intention, and how to really level up in what you want to call in the results of your business, the results of your relationship, the results of the effectiveness of your work and connections. So it all comes down to like your own practice and connecting with your soul, connecting with your own life force energy, connecting with your own divine feminine, or whichever term that resonates with you.
I love that.
So I feel so passionate about sharing that, you know, with anybody who wants to lead their life in that way.
Exactly. Because it's such a powerful shift. Like it's such a powerful shift. And I think it's where we're headed ultimately. Yeah.
Yes. And I think the power comes from, you know, at the end of the day, you really do like create what you have, right? So creating the life that you have, right? It's in co-creation with the big guys.
Exactly. I love that. All right. So I'm going to wrap up our conversation here, and I encourage everybody, I'm going to put some of Whitney's links in the show notes below. So check out Whitney, check out what she's working on, connect with her, follow her. You'll be happy that you did. So Whitney, I thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation. It has been so great to get to reconnect with you and hear your perspective on things.
It's always so nice to be in the same room with you. So thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy it. It's such a pleasure. I love it, and I love you.
Love you too. Thanks so much.